Good evening. And welcome to First Baptist Church here in Savannah, Georgia. We are a congregation that is historic, liturgical, and vibrant.
It is our pleasure to be with you here tonight as together we celebrate the 100th anniversary of our beloved pipe organ. This is the third event in a year-long celebration of our organ. After tonight's program, ushers will be handing out flyers as you leave that will detail the rest of this year's events in the series. If you would like more information about the organ or about the series, you may scan the QR code on the back of your program. Our next event in the series will be a Palm Sunday presentation of the 7 last words of Christ, with combined adult choirs from across Savannah.
Tonight's program features our Minister of Music, Dr. Justin L. Addington, and our Organist Emeritus, Reverend James Richardson. Tonight, you will also hear reflections from our church members about the organ, about hopes, about memories, and about everything in between. You're in for a real treat. So if you would, please silence your cell phones and prepare your hearts and minds for this time where we think about and honor our organ and the 100 years that it has served our congregation. We pray that tonight will be an opportunity for you to enjoy not only great music, but also to experience the divine. Without further ado, Dr. Justin L. Addington and Reverend James C. Richardson.
Theodore Dubois was a French Romantic organist, composer, and teacher, and I decided to include something by Dubois this afternoon because you will be hearing one of the great choral works by this composer when our choir presents it on Palm Sunday. His setting of the seven last words is one of the most dramatic pieces you will ever hear sung in a church and makes great use of the organ throughout. I suppose that most of us have a bucket list of some kind. Things we'd like to do, places we'd like to go, so forth. Last summer, I got to check something off mine. My friend Jim and I flew to San Francisco for a week of vacation. As strange as it was for two organists to be somewhere other than their own churches on a Sunday, we included in our planning attending a worship service at the Grace Cathedral. Richard Purvis had been the organist there for several decades in the early part of the 20th century. From the time I began studying organ, I was a fan of his compositions. He wrote church music in nearly every style, most of it based on familiar hymn tunes, and all of it carefully registered to make the most of the many sounds available on a pipe organ such as ours. So this afternoon, I decided to play two contrasting pieces by Purvis. The first is a big triumphant march, and the second, a lovely, quiet setting of a familiar gospel song. In that latter piece, Purvis makes you wait for a while before you hear the tune appear. Justin and I felt that somewhere in this series of organ performances, we should pay tribute to Dwight Bruce, who was the organist who preceded me as the caretaker and primary player of this instrument for nearly 40 years. I don't know that Dwight ever composed any music for the organ, but I do know that he had many favorites that he played again and again through the years. One of those was the Solemn Melody by Walford Davies. I chose it to complete my solo part of the recital tonight because it so dramatically displays the full dynamic range of this magnificent instrument.
I most enjoy when the church chandeliers are glowing and I can hear the magnificent sound of the organ floating through the air on quiet evenings in the neighborhood.
I grew up in a church that was very similar to this. It was very high church, very liturgical, and had a magnificent organ. And when I first started worshiping here in 1993, First Baptist was in between ministers. What kept me coming was the worshipfulness of the service, and the music with this beautiful organ accompaniment behind it was a lot of what kept me here until they hired a minister and I felt comfortable enough to be able to join the congregation.
I think this organ has such a marvelous sound, and it's a sound and also accompanied by tremendous versatility that gives us so many opportunities for different types of music. I think about the history of the organ and how it has been central to celebrations in this church of so many different types, those of the Christian calendar and others too. I think about this organ in combination with other instruments. For example, the guitar, and how lovely that is. So that's one of the lovely things about an organ, and especially one as fine as we have.
I love it. I love the sound. It just fills my soul. And certain pieces, I feel that I could just float away, just go into the atmosphere, into the heavens on the sounds that organ can make.
I suppose you would expect me to look at the organ in a different way from most of you. And I do, because before I retired, it was a rare day that I didn't spend considerable time playing this instrument, preparing for the Sundays and the seasons that lay ahead. But my main desire, my main hope and prayer and insistence that this 100-year-old E.M. Skinner remain for future generations is much more personal than that, and more emotional. My children were both baptized here. They were both married here. My two granddaughters were both dedicated here. I was ordained here. My wife's memorial service was held here. And I retired here twice. Every one of those events had this organ for its support, and none of them would have been as sacred or as holy without the sound of this organ and the cloud of witnesses it summoned. Those who come after us deserve nothing less.
One of my main ways of worshiping is through music, and the bass that this instrument gives to that is just phenomenal.
100 years ago, when Lucy Camp Armstrong, a church member, gave us this beautiful organ, I wonder if she considered all the people in the future, not only those in her own age, to whom this organ would be so meaningful, not only people in this congregation, but throughout the city. Because just as our historic houses of worship are a treasure here, so too is a wonderful organ like we have.
A valuable instrument such as we have, appreciated and enjoyed by so many listeners, needs to stay here. It was here when I came into this church as a child. I would like to think it's here long after I'm gone for the future.
The basis of this instrument can provide so much for the foundation of our worship experience that it has to be preserved.
As we continue to celebrate the centennial of our organ's installation, we ask that you prayerfully consider helping us to maintain this instrument for future generations. If you would like to contribute to the ongoing care of the First Baptist organ, you may leave a gift in the offering plate as you enter or exit the sanctuary. You may also donate via our website. Please make sure to mark Organ Fund in your memo. Thank you in advance for your help and support. See, this makes me nervous. The master comes to watch over my shoulder right here. That was a grand chorus piece by Salome, who is a contemporary of Dubois. So that was my nod to the French Romantic era to kind of coincide with James's opener. As James mentioned before, it was very important to us that we play pieces of music on this program that honored the history of this instrument. James paid tribute to Dwight Bruce, his predecessor, and so we're going to go back in time a little more now. The next piece on the program is Eventide by Fairclough, and if anyone has ever heard that piece of music or played it before, I would be very surprised. I would like to meet you after the program is over, because it took me a very long time to find it. But that piece of music was played on this organ's original dedication in 1922. It's a wonderful romantic and symphonic piece. I think today we would use the term schmaltzy. But it does a great job of showing off the versatility of the instrument. And organs of this time period were built to play orchestral transcriptions. So you have a lot of solo lines with flutes and clarinets and horns and the like. So you'll hear the organ truly become an orchestra in this next piece of music. In Billy Clark's book, The Organs of Savannah, there is a quote taken from a National Organ magazine that was published on June 1st of 1922. And I would like to read you what it said about our organ's dedication. The dedicatory recital of the Skinner organ in the First Baptist Church of Savannah was played on May 4th by A. Leslie Jacobs, organist and director of music of that church. His program was so well received that he has had numerous requests to repeat it. That's a high mark, James. The organ was presented to the church by Lucy May Camp Armstrong in memory of her parents. The organ, a three-manual instrument with echo, has 41 complete registers, 17 couplers, 21 pistons, and other accessories suiting a modern instrument. The console has 50 stop knobs, including some borrow and augmented stops. The steel bars that make up the harp division are situated in the choir division in the attic, and the tubular chimes are in the echo chamber above the rear gallery. And those two pieces of equipment have remained in place for 100 years. Certain parts of the organ have been rearranged, but those have remained in place. Then the article goes on to share some pieces of music that Mr. Jacobs played on the program, including a prelude and fugue in G minor by Bach, the Largo from the New World Symphony, and of course, Eventide by Fairclough. So I'm going to play this piece for you now, and to my knowledge, based on the little amount of research I've been able to do, this will be the first time this piece of music has been heard publicly in this space for 100 years. Well, if you know anything about the relationship between myself and James Richardson, it is made of tremendous mutual respect, admiration, love, and quite a bit of making fun of one another. Probably more of the latter than anything else. When I moved back to Savannah, and while our home in South Carolina was being prepared to sell, James was kind enough to let us live with him for about a month while we sorted out our living situation. And I was fascinated by the fact that James had some of the most musical appliances I had ever seen in my life. I mean, they don't just do a little buzz or a ding when they're done, but they play a whole tune. And of course, someone like James would have musical appliances, but I did some research and found out that that's a trademark of the LG appliance line, is that they do this. Well, at the time, I joked with James and I said, one of these days, I'm going to write a piece of music based on all these little tunes of yours. He, of course, thought I was joking, but today is the day. So I'm going to quasi-improvise on some of these melodies from James's appliances, but in order to make it a little more holy for a church situation, I have paired them loosely, and some might say sacrilegiously, with corresponding hymn tunes. So you can read those in the program and laugh or scoff as you will. But just so that you can hear how all of this is going to work, before I play each movement, a picture of James's appliance is going to appear. And you are going to get to hear the theme on which the piece will be based, okay? And I'm going to use the appliance themes kind of like a ritornello, a repeating theme between the hymn tunes. All right? Forgive me.
Thank you. I suppose it is now up to me to bring some dignity and decorum back into this concert. But first I have to say, Justin, it really was clever. Did anybody else start to get hungry when you heard, let us bake bread together? When I first met Justin, right here at this console, I told him about the next AGO program that I and a colleague were working on. It was to be a recital of organ duets, 4 hands, 4 feet, all on one instrument. Before the week was over, I was calling Justin to say, are you pretty good at sight reading? You see, my colleague had just backed out, and the AGO program was about a week away. He was willing to give it a try, and so shortly, we had played our first of many programs together. It was at First Presbyterian Church on Washington Avenue, and the console there is movable, so we had it center stage. That was just too good of an opportunity to do a little bit of bantering, and so it has been ever since.
As you have seen, our friendship is multifaceted. When most people think of us, they think of something like this. But there's also, at times, this. Now, Keith, would you go back to that previous picture? This was organ music by candlelight, which was in December of 2010, my first year here and the first year that we met. I also want to point out, before I go any further, that when James retired from this church, they did a painting of him as a minister, like they normally do here at this church, and they used this picture as the model and painted me out of it. One day I'll put myself back in the picture. When I moved to Savannah in 2010, I was starting a brand new job, almost fresh out of college. I was here by myself, and little did I know what this friendship was going to turn into, because as I moved here, James had just lost his wife, Carol Ann. And so we were all experiencing new things together. And it was because of that program that I had to play at the last minute that we are the friends we are today. And I'm so grateful because we have shared many joyful occasions, and we've been through a lot of hard times together and have been a support for each other. So I give thanks for that opportunity, and I give thanks now that I get to carry on James's legacy and work alongside of him week in and week out in this wonderful place playing this wonderful instrument. So, to give you a taste of what that was like originally, we're going to end our program today by playing for you that first piece of music we learned together, which is a set of theme and variations on the hymn tune, Praise to the Lord the Almighty. I will also point out that as part of that original program, as a bit of fun, James measured the bench to make sure that we could both fit on it to play this. And both of us have changed slightly since we did that, and I told him he was not allowed to measure the bench this evening.